Welcome everyone to Cheese in Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today we're really fortunate to be able to have a good friend and colleague, I guess. We've worked together many times in Denver on a couple of events there, and it's always a pleasure to be able to taste her cheese, talk to her, and I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Birgit. Birgit?
Perfect. Hello, everybody. My name is Birgit Halbreiter. I'm the co-owner and founder of MouCo Cheese Company, together with my husband, Robert. And yes, I have the pleasure to be here today with Michael, which is awesome. It's always great to connect with you, Michael. And so I'm going to do a little introduction on myself and do a background just so you get to know me a little bit better. I grew up in Germany. I'm German, and I grew up actually in Bavaria, in the Allgäu region, so not the Oktoberfest Munich area, but a little bit further west. Green meadows, green hills, brown cows, all of that good stuff. Yellow flowered meadows, very close to the Swiss and Austrian border. And so it is dotted there with tons of small farms, comparable to the American standards of farms, and lots of cheese companies and dairy facilities. My dad was a master cheesemaker. He worked at various companies in that region, and I kind of joined in his footsteps, not by becoming a cheesemaker, but I worked for Cheesemaker Champignon and did my apprenticeship there as a laboratory technician. So for a while, we actually worked together, different departments, but you would cross each other during the day occasionally, or you would have to tell them the bad news about some counts or other problems, and then it's just always funny when you then have to tell your father. I stayed there for a while and eventually moved to Canada. I worked there for a small private laboratory, food analysis. I was their microbiologist and did anything from ice cream, milk, shelf life storage, and like even pre-dog food stuff and checking that stuff for Salmonella, Listeria. Then I moved on to malts and breweries, and that began my journey in the beer industry. I was there for about 6-7 years, and it was a fun place. We were a great group of people, and we had a lot of parties. And as I learned, brewers party a lot, and eventually I came down to Colorado and worked for New Belgium Brewing Company. They offered me a position as their quality control manager, and that gave me the opportunity to implement everything I had learned over the decades and make it mine, because it was one of those American dream stories. I'm sure most of you know New Belgium Brewing. At this point, they are nationwide. And when we started there in the early 90s, they just came out of their basement and had built a new facility. And so me and some other, like 2, 3, 4 other people were their first round of professionals that they hired. And it was just fun to implement all the knowledge and the ideas that I had. I was able to create a sensory program for them and everything else that goes with quality control. So Robert and I stayed there. He was there actually before I started. And when it came time to leave, we had to kind of reinvent ourselves. And we thought at the time, well, maybe we should open a brew pub here in Fort Collins. And there were like 3 at that time. And we thought, well, there's really no space for that, which is kind of an interesting take on things, because today there's about 18. And so obviously for that time period, we didn't feel we needed more beer. And so we decided, since there is very few cheese companies here in Colorado, that would be a smart move and to create to fill a niche, so to speak. There are not that many dairy farms here. However, we could and were able to source some cow's milk, and we knew we wanted to stay with cow's milk. And the specialty cheeses that I was familiar with were soft ripened cheeses. And so we decided that is exactly what we wanted to do. We did feel there were plenty of hard cheeses in the United States and in this area, and most people knew what a hard cheese is, but Colorado was definitely a new frontier for soft ripened cheeses. We didn't quite understand that when we started, and we quickly learned that not only, you know, are we starting to be business owners, we are also in the business of education, because we just realized people had no idea what soft ripened cheeses are. So here we are. We started out selling the cheeses to local stores. We have like one little local grocery store here in town. They were our first customer, and this is what we did for the farmers markets. We actually biked there for the first year, and we took some umbrella and a cooler, and that's how we sold our first batches of cheese. And we only had one brand. We had the Camembert at that time, so that was easy, and that's how we got our word out. So this is kind of like a short take on my history. We've been in business now for 20 years, which seems crazy because every day still feels like we're learning new stuff, which we totally do. And then of course the world throws you always new challenges, like, you know, 2020 and 2008 was quite an awakening, and everything in between, right? We had to learn how to become a business, how to deal with distributors, how to not just make cheese, but do all these other things that come along when you run a business. I always want to point out how Colorado is different than maybe other places here in the US. We don't have the tourists. We don't have a farm in our case. And so what we do to reach the public, and also coming back to that education piece, we give tours. Now, the picture that I show was a fun tour of children, and we don't have that many elementary school children coming through. It depends on the year. And although they are very cute, and they come in and immediately pinch their noses and not let go of their noses for 30 minutes. It's really funny. We work closely with Colorado State University and their fermentation and food science program, and they come here every semester for tours. We offer tours to regular Fort Colonites and their families when they come to visit. That is our outreach, that's our education, and it's a lot of fun. It is a nice break and show them what we do, because people are amazingly unaware on how their food is made. And that just gives us even more the drive to just educate them and make sure that they walk away with a little bit more knowledge. We do the events. That is another way for us to have fun. So we are signing up a lot to a lot of wine festivals, beer festivals, chocolate festivals. When it is not 2020, we are usually busy most weekends, going somewhere, schlepping our event stuff with us, and presenting it to thousands and thousands of people. And that has been really worked well for us, and they are a lot of fun. Some of them are a little bit more, you know, trade shows and more in the food area, and others are just plain beer festivals, and people, you know, everything that is combined with alcohol eventually will be a lot of fun. And so they usually love our cheese, which is great. And a lot of these festivals don't offer much food, which is, so they pile up at our tent, which is wonderful.
So let's talk a little bit about where you get your milk, your cattle, and that area.
Absolutely. So if you have that slide with the milk truck there, we don't have our own farm. We have this little milk truck, Chuck the milk truck. It is a tiny milk truck that we bought used from Wisconsin, and we take it up north about 11 miles to the farm where we get our milk from. This is, you just saw the cows there on the farm. It's a 1,000 head farm. He's a conventional farmer. I put one of those pictures in with snow on it because it is so hot right here in Colorado. The mountains are burning up with wildfires. The smoke is terrible. And if my voice goes, it has to do with the smoke damage because we can't even go outside. It's that bad right now. So anyways, I saw this picture and I'm dreaming of winter. So that's why I had to put the winter picture in. So we take the truck, we go up to the farm. We do meet the Dairy Farmers of America here right at the farm. They sign off the milk that we take and we return back. We have a great relationship with the farmer. However, at the same time, we are a drop in the bucket for him, and most of his milk goes straight to Leprino. They are just about 30 miles east from here, and they are the largest mozzarella makers in the world. And so it is a lot easier for us to actually go to the farm and get our milk there. So they have come and visited. We go visit them when we have reason to, and we have a great work relationship with them, which is awesome. There's the other picture. I kind of had a hard time finding pictures of their farm. Farmers don't look after their websites very well. So once the milk is then here in the plant, we pasteurize. None of our cheeses are aged over 60 days. So all of the milk is pasteurized and stored till the next day. So I will walk you guys through the production process just a little bit to familiarize how we do things. Soft ripened cheese making is slightly different than hard cheese making. And since that is our focus and specialty, it might not look familiar to all of you. So this was just a little video that Robert put together showing like a super busy day. Like the first on the video on top shows a health inspection. And they, as you know, probably show up and come without announcement, and they don't care what you're doing and what your plans are for the day. And here we are having the health inspections. Then we also are wrapping cheese. If you can go back to the other one, that would be great. And so the middle one is a cheese wrapping machine, and later on there's more of those, a video of that. So one person loads it on, the other person takes off the wrapped rounds. And it's a very mechanical machine. It's a lot of fun. It goes like click, click. And then we have a labeler that we use, you know, to obviously put the labels on the outside. And so all of that was going on at the same time. I just thought that was a fun thing for one video. The next slide that you saw is a turner. So we have block forms. We don't have individual forms. So within each layer of this form are 45 of our rounds, and then we can stack them. So as you can see here, there's quite a few cheeses just in the one stack, and we roll one stack into our turner, which is then actually manually turned. It has this huge wheel on the back, and people just turn that huge wheel and flip the cheeses. And so obviously that happens a few times, since this is just part of a cheese making process after the forms are filled and stacked. So once the milk is in the building and it pasteurized, it stays cooled overnight, and then, you know, we go through the cheese making process. And I think the next slide will show you how our cheese making vessels actually look. They are these half round KBAs, as they're called, and this is where the magic happens. And we create the whey and the curd by cutting, and then they get dumped into the laid out forms with these chutes that you can see. And so, like I said earlier, each of these block forms holds 45 wheels. So we have 8 of these forms laid out, and that then they will be stacked and then go into the turner. Eventually, they will be salted and aged. We age for about 12 days, and then we go through the packaging and labeling process and shipping process. Here you can see the curd and the whey just getting dumped into those block forms. They have some extensions on top to catch all the curd. There we go, and it gets just distributed. Eventually, you know, the whey drains off to the bottom, and we are left with the curds that will grow back together. After the salting, it gets stacked, and then after about 10-12 days, it gets wrapped. We used to wrap by hand. This is the wrapping machine. So it just gets, the plunger just pushes the cheese right into the cheese paper. Which brings me to the cheese paper, which is also a soft ripened cheese specialty, I would say. We used to hand wrap everything, and it just got to be too much, and Gertie's wrists just started to get sore, and so we invested into a very simple machine from the 1970s, actually. So it's a refurbished machine that we got, and it's very mechanical, so we can actually fix it, which is awesome. We don't like super technical stuff. The pasteurizer is definitely the most complicated thing out there for us. Cheese paper. Soft ripened cheeses need air. They cannot just be shrink wrapped because it just kills them, because they have the surface organisms growing there, and so we have to keep them alive. And the paper that we use is actually from my hometown, which is actually a funny story. We were driving, Robert came with me to visit, and so he's in the back of the car, and he tunes out, you know, because his German is limited. And then so when I chat with my family, he just tunes out and looks out the window, and then he taps me and he says, "What does that say?" We just were passing some truck, and so I look over and I said, "Oh, that's a foil company, right?" And so he jots down the name and Googles them, and they are actually the biggest supplier for soft ripened cheese paper in the area, because guess what? It's the area of soft ripened cheeses. So it totally makes sense, and it's just funny that they're actually in my hometown. So this paper is like a 3-layered paper, metal, plastic, and paper, and it's perforated to let the oxygen in and the CO2 out, and that really makes it possible for the cheese to keep its integrity for the whole shelf life, which is about 2 months for the bloomy rind cheeses and 3 months for the washed rind cheeses.
On your cheeses, on your labels, you also have a guideline of their taste characteristics.
Yes, so here is a quick picture of the different kinds that we make, and I'm going to show you here the back of these labels, the back label of the cheese. And where is it? Here we go. I don't know if you can see that, but we are stamping 3 dates on the back, with the last one being kind of the expiration date that we have to put on by law. And all the cheesemakers and cheesemongers know that cheese doesn't necessarily go bad, of course, but by law we have to put a date on there. And however, the other 2 dates are just an indication for the consumer to know how the cheese changes over its shelf life. Soft ripened cheeses has a lot of goes through a lot of changes, a lot more than hard cheeses. And as I explain it in my tours that I give here, hard cheese goes harder as it ages and becomes crumblier. And soft ripened cheeses does exactly the opposite. It goes from firm too soft and gooey or runny, depending on the water content of your cheese. And it loses the tanginess and gives way to the sweetness or stinkiness, or however you want to describe it, depending also on the style of cheese. And so we've always felt, with part of that education process, that we had to explain to people how their cheese will change in the fridge. And I also find that our cheeses are really great beginners cheeses, especially when they're young. They're non-offensive, they're not super of anything, right? We're making mild cheeses, very approachable cheeses, and can convince people then, hey, this is a great beginner cheese. Why don't you now age this cheese and wait what happens in 2 months? Or you go to a store and actually, you know, just buy a different cheese. So now you don't have to be scared anymore. Now you don't have to hesitate and wonder. We do have people coming up to tables when we do these events where people are like totally suspicious. They're like, what is this? Because Colorado is kind of, I don't know, cowboy country in a way, and people are just really not familiar with soft ripened cheeses. It's a little bit a generational thing. The younger, the more knowledgeable, I guess, or more exposed to these types of, or newer foods, I would say. And so people are sometimes really suspicious, and they're like, what is this? Can I, like, is this, especially at chocolate festivals, they're like, is this chocolate? So we don't even take our truffle cheese to chocolate festivals anymore, because people consistently think that we sprinkle our cheese with chocolate bits. And while that might be a cool marketing idea, I'm not ready to do that. I'd rather eat my chocolate on the side. So anyways, I think our cheeses are really approachable and are a great educational tool to expose people to new flavors and new tastes. And then they can explore from there. And that's why we felt it was necessary to have 3 dates on there, because the cheeses with their shorter shelf life compared to hard cheeses, that they are aware what's in their fridge and what happens within a few weeks. So yes.
Okay.
That's the explanation of the 3 dates. It was just very clear very early on when we decided what size cheeses do we want to make. It was very clear that we did not want to make, we make a few big wheels, but you know, we wanted to make small wheels that people can take home. They are unadulterated by, that was 20 years ago, right? Cheese delis were not a thing then yet, really. So there was not a lot of knowledge, especially in this part of the country where we started out. And so we didn't want them to be touched and changed just by, or mistreated by saran wrap and by whatever, right? Different temperatures. Yeah. So we decided we wanted to make definitely a pre-wrapped item that people can take home, that will stay with the right paper in place, will stay and keep its integrity for the whole shelf life. Like it, from my place to your place, it is what we meant it to be. So, and that has really worked. And sometimes people have come back and said, oh, your packaging is too slick and too like big company or whatever. And we're like, really? But we are, our background is big industry, right? So we took that knowledge and brought it to our little company. We have, you know, 3 employees here that pump out all this cheese because we are efficient. Robert loves stainless steel and efficiency. So this is the focus, and I think it worked out well for the most part. You know, there's hiccups. Every company has hiccups here and there, and sometimes you get sick of it, and sometimes you're like challenged by it, and you're like inspired by it.
Anything else you want to say about the company, the cheese making, or anything like that before we get into cheese?
Yeah, I actually, yesterday when we prepped for this, I found this picture of my dad, who used to come here about 4 weeks every year, like in the early 2000s when we had just started, and you know, helped us along, tweaking the process and the efficiency part and the cheese making. We used to make cheese in buckets, as you can see here. We already had the block forms and the extensions, and there he was making cheese. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but he had a lot of fun coming to America because he always felt he could do however he wants to, and nobody will judge him. That was one of his favorite things. So we always appreciated his help, and until he got just too tired of the whole flying and immigration process, and it just got to be too much. But by then we were well established, and we would just call in occasionally for the occasional problem or tidbit or whatever, or he would have an idea and he's like, oh, I just wanted to tell you, you should start this or you should do this. And but he was quite instrumental when we started making the ColoRouge. We will talk about that in a few minutes, and that was one of our dreams, so he definitely had a big hand in that.